I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
This week we are discussing Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, the movie, the Disney Plus original movie from 2022. We had talked about this right before the movie came out. We even did an episode about the series. You can go back and check out our episode on the series if you want. When this was originally announced, I was actually pretty excited because, again, I love the original cartoon, the Disney Afternoon series, and a movie based off that series sounded like a really great idea. Then the trailer dropped, and oh, this is going to be nothing like the TV series this thing is based on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's one of those things that make you wonder, was this always intended to be a Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movie, or was this an idea that they had to rewrite to become a Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movie because they needed some sort of popular IP to attach to it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they always wanted to do something with Chip 'n Dale, and I think it was just because they wanted to ride the coattails of the Chipmunks. Like, they had not gone through the Fox buyout yet, and the Chipmunk movies had done well for Fox, and Disney was looking at their catalog and being like, well, what do we have that we can ride that wave? And the only thing they had was Chip 'n Dale, and to be honest, Rescue Rangers was the most popular version of Chip 'n Dale.
That's true. I mean, to kind of go into the movie a little bit, I do not like that they completely ignore their career prior to Rescue Rangers.
Yeah, in this version, they really just start with the 80s. Chip 'n Dale are basically like Gen X millennial characters. So there is no mention of them prior to that. You know, they start out as like little kids in maybe the late 70s, maybe the early 80s.
The opening graphic says 1982, and they're in school together.
So they would have been born in the 70s, maybe, depending on how fast a chipmunk ages.
Cartoon chipmunks.
Yeah, the cartoon chipmunk in the thing. But
this seems to be in a similar world to Roger Rabbit, where cartoon characters and humans live side by side.
I mean, they even do kind of a Roger Rabbit shout out, because you do see the car designs from Roger Rabbit right at the beginning in the school line doing drop off. So they want to draw that immediately, like from scene one. These are the Lonely Island guys.
Yeah.
That are doing this movie. So that's their kind of, you know, they're all like late Gen X, early millennial guys as far as age range. And so they're all roughly our age. And that's that's their touchstone for Chip and Dale, you know?
Like, I get it, but like I said, we've talked here, we're both Disney fans, not only of the stuff we grew up with, but the classic stuff as well. So to ignore all of those classic Chip and Dale cartoons, that did leave a sour patch in my craw, as it were. This movie is also very inconsistent on whether cartoons age or not. Because obviously Chip and Dale started as children and grow into adult chipmunks. One of the main characters starts out as a young cartoon and grows into an older 40-ish year old man, despite his movie being out in the 1940s. And you have characters that are from the same era who have not aged at all.
Yeah, and once Chip and Dale hit their adult ages, they seem to stop aging. You know, they hit their adult years in the late 80s, let's say, and then they do not age between the late 80s and 2022. But other characters, like you say, do age in that time. Others don't. You know, it's very inconsistent in that. They do have the idea of a type of plastic surgery that turns the 2D animated characters into 3D CGI characters.
Which Dale goes through.
Yeah, Dale goes through that for the sake of his career. Chip stays a 2D animated character throughout the entire run.
He just gives up acting. Like, acting isn't for him anymore. He just goes and gets a normal job. But apparently, Dale is not the only one, as we later see in here another Disney afternoon character, Baloo, as they say, goes through the CG surgery for the Jungle Book movie reboot, implying that it is in fact the same Baloo.
Yeah. Interestingly, Dale is the only one of the Rescue Rangers who has gone through the CG transformation. Because we see all of the Rescue Rangers at various points through the movie, and Dale is the only one that has gone through the CG transformation. Of course, the rest of them have left acting.
Mm-hmm.
Dale is the only one that is still trying to have an acting career after all these years. The rest of them have retired and they're, doing other things.
Some, they've gone and gotten real jobs. They've left acting and started families.
That is the creepiest subplot.
Gadget and Zipper.
I do not like that. I mean, I think Zipper was always in love with Gadget. I think we all kind of understood that. But, yeah.
I mean, it's implying that these are actors working on the show. So
yeah, but
the characters in the show versus the actors that portray them are two different things.
But at one point, Gadget says there's no difference between her and the character she played on the show.
And that feels like a bit of bad writing, or just it feels like a wink nod to the audience that is just an excuse for bad writing.
But also, I mean, we've talked about that in lots of our 80s and early 90s cartoons. When we talk about things, is that it'll be like all the guys have very clear-cut personalities, and then we just have the girl.
Yeah.
And then Gadget had slightly more as she was the girl, but also
The
a
inventor.
mechanic and,
Yeah.
all this other kind of stuff. So slightly more, but it almost feels like that in reverse, that they couldn't think of a way to come up with a different personality for her
Mhm.
in this movie, so they were just like, oh, she'll have the same personality as the show.
When we first meet Gadget outside of the show, she's working in a garage.
Yeah.
So, another thing that did irk me is, and I understand they needed it for plot reasons, but the scene from Rescue Rangers that they show is a scene that has never been in the show. It is made just for this movie. They're fighting Fat Cat, and then Chip hits Dale with a wrench, and you get the cartoon birds, and the birds distract Fat Cat because he's cat. Something that is just so out of what Rescue Rangers is, because Rescue Rangers never went that far into cartoon logic. But it's made just for this movie because we need it for the climax at the end of the movie.
There are so many things about this, and I think the thing that got me, because this was a first watch for me, I didn't watch it when it first came out, but the thing about this film is that it was kind of exactly what I thought it would be from the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that got me, and I told you this before, after I saw it, was the background jokes funnier than what was in the script. Every single frame of this movie has some kind of background joke that is absolutely hysterical. So if you just keep your eyes on the background, you will have a great time watching this movie. My favorite joke in the whole movie is they pass a billboard that is for the film Lego Miserable.
Yeah.
And I would watch that movie unironically. Please greenlight that movie. I want to see that movie.
There's a couple of funny bits there, like Dobby, the CG model for Dobby as a Gucci model.
And also Senator Butthead running on a platform about bootleg laws.
And that's a big plot point in the movie of bootleg cartoons.
Yeah. So protecting cartoons' rights against bootlegging, But I just love the idea that Butthead has gone into politics. It makes me laugh,
I just love, if they would have had the rights to use the character, of just having him not talk like the character, like boobs, and just like have him talk normally with intelligence. Like that's just the character he played. He actually is an intelligent person and making these political speeches and actually wanting to fight for toon rights. I don't know if Mike Judge would have gone with it, but it's an interesting thought.
The idea of the fact that Monterey Jack is not the only cartoon. I mean, this is not necessarily a background thing, it's part of the plot, but the idea that Monterey Jack really is addicted to cheese and it's an actual drug. And they're treating it like an actual drug in the movie.
Yeah,
because it was just a cute joke in the original cartoon, like, oh, mouse cheese, ha ha ha, But then, like, they actually go into a cheese shop and they're like, oh, stinky cheese, you're not a cop, are you? And they're like, oh yeah, we got stink lines that'll raise you to the ceiling. And, like, it's an actual drug for cartoons. Which I think is hilarious. I like that they're going with the literal interpretation at that point.
There was no way they were going to get Mickey into this, but the idea of the possibility of Mickey being addicted to cheese like that.
Yeah, it is funny what characters Disney will and won't allow to be used in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
And Mickey is kind of sacred, but it is hilarious the ones that they allowed to show up. And the thing that really got me was how many characters they were able to apparently license for this, because some of them are parodies. Like, they have the Coca-Cola polar bear, but there's not Coca-Cola branding. Like, you get that that's the Coke polar bear,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not, it's very copyright free. But then there are some things that it's like, Disney does not own these things yet, but it's just straight up the actual characters.
Apparently, they did not ask permission for Sonic. Ugly Sonic, they just put him in the movie and no one said anything. Yeah, the Sonic the Hedgehog from the original movie trailer that everybody hated.
With the teeth.
Yeah. Is in the movie and plays a major plot point. They did not get permission from Sega. They did not get permission from Paramount. They just used the character. And apparently they didn't get in trouble for it.
I guess they just assumed that both companies would be so embarrassed that they wouldn't start a lawsuit over it. The thing is like, there are so many things in there where it's just, Tiger's in there.
At least that's a Marvel character.
Well, yeah, but
it's from the 90s Avengers cartoon. The one no one remembers. The one that didn't have Captain America or Iron Man or Thor in it.
Yeah, and then, like, He-Man and Skeletor are in there. And
I'm surprised they got the original voice actors to do that scene.
Yeah, that was weird.
Randy Marsh from South Park makes a cameo in this movie.
Yeah, there is a fan dressed up as Ash Ketchum, but it's like a dead-on Ash Ketchum.
It's a Comic-Con, so you can kind of think you can get away with it, but it's like, I only could think that it's the Lonely Island. They have connections. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, and then there's so much Transformers stuff. Voltron.
Blaster is in the audience at their school talent show, which means Blaster has a child that goes to this school. It's probably one of the cassette tapes.
Yeah. But yeah, Voltron is in this. The weirdest one is DJ Cool Cat and Paula Abdul.
Paula Abdul as herself.
Yeah, Paula Abdul as herself, but also DJ Cool Cat, which is, I mean, it's not owned by anybody other than DJ Cool Cat, but that was such a weird, like, hey, we're in the 80s, early 90s.
I mean, Paula Abdul playing herself, she doesn't look that much older than she did in the 90s. So I can excuse that.
This is now the second cartoon thing that Paula Abdul has reprised that bit for.
The other one was the Family Guy, wasn't it?
Yeah, she re-recorded her audio because they did not have clean audio and they wanted to do the parody.
2 steps forward. what?
I take 2 steps back.
We come together.
'Cause I'm dressed like a cat.
And they wanted to take out DJ Cool Cat's part and all, but they realized that because of the way the original audio was done, they couldn't separate out the 2 tracks of DJ Cool Cat and Paula's singing. And on a whim, they contacted Paula Abdul and they were like, we know you're going to say no, but would you be willing to re-record your bit for like 30, 40 seconds so that we can do this parody bit with Seth MacFarlane doing the other half? And she was like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. Well, I'll do it. And so when you hear that track on Family Guy, that is her doing new audio for it.
And it still sounds the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, they wanted her to do it as exact as possible, but that, it's just her redoing her audio. So Paula Abdul seems like really down to just do whatever, which is kind of cool, but I don't really know why she's so into it.
Maybe she's just really into cartoons. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know.
We mentioned He-Man and Skeletor, but for the most part, many characters are reprised by their original actors. Roger Rabbit's one line is by the original actor. Jim Cummings is in this movie, and he reprises a bunch of his past characters. Fat Cat, he's Pete, a little cameo of Darkwing Duck, but not Monterey Jack.
Who for some reason is Eric Bana.
That is weird. You already have Jim Cummings, and you have Tress MacNeille playing Gadget. Unless they really, 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 really wanted Eric Bana in this movie.
And I guess Tress MacNeille is just her own stunt casting.
Maybe.
Because everybody else is stunt casting of some famous actor. And then it's just Tress MacNeille.
Like, okay, we mentioned the Lonely Island. Co-writer of this movie is co-writer of this movie is Dan Greger. And his wife is Rachel Bloom, who cameos in the movie as Flounder. This is probably the first time Flounder has ever been voiced by a non-child. Because that was the kind of whole thing in the original movie, in the cartoon series, even in the remake movie. Flounder's always been voiced by a child, but now we get Rachel Bloom.
I mean, I'm not against it.
Yeah. It's just weird.
Yeah. But the thing is that basically everybody else who shows up in this movie is some kind of stunt casting, but then it's, Tress is just her original character,
Tress also does Chipmunk voice for the few minutes we get it in the movie. Same with Corey Burton doing Dale's Chipmunky voice, which fine. But again, I don't know why we need Andy Samberg and John Mulaney to voice these two characters. I get it, Lonely Island, I get it. But it just feels off,
Well, I think it's because they're going with the idea of them being actors rather than them just being chipmunks.
And that I get.
And so I think that's I think if they were doing just a Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie with them being just the normal Rescue Rangers, it might have been different.
One weird reference in here is Dale's attempt at breaking out as a solo act, him having his own show called Double O Dale. And we kind of mentioned this when we talked about Darkwing Duck, how it originally was going to be a spy show called Double O Duck before the owners of James Bond decided, hey, we own Double O, you can't do that. So it's a weird reference, and I don't know if this was an intentional reference or not.
Well, given that the movie ends with Darkwing begging the audience to be like, hey, tell him you want Darkwing, maybe.
And I kind of get Dale here. Dale is it's always Chip and Dale, not Dale and Chip.
That was one of my favorite blink and you'll miss it jokes in the movie, is that when we first see Dale at the comic convention, his autograph pictures that he's selling say Dale Rescue Rangers, because Chip's not with him and he's not in any of the pictures. So it's got like pictures of Dale, and some of them are actually at least mocked up of bits from the show. Like there's Dale in the samurai costume that appeared in one episode and all that. So like if you've seen the show, you kind of recognize some of the ones in the background. But the logo, Chip is whited out in the logo. And so it just reads Dale Rescue Rangers.
And apparently at this point, Dale's acting career has gone so far downhill, he's now a vlogger. Dale's Tales.
Yeah, on whatever their version of Instagram is.
Yeah.
They don't use the term, but you know, it's meant to look like that.
So it's kind of, Dale tried to break out as a solo act. It did not go well. He's trying to hang on to whatever bit of stardom he has left, and it's just going nowhere. Meanwhile, the other cats have moved on with their lives. They've all gotten real world jobs. They've moved on with their lives. They've left the spotlight behind, and Dale is just trying to grab onto what little spotlight he has left.
One of the things that I like is the night that Chip and Dale have their big breakup. And Chip finds out about Double O Dale, is that Dale accuses Chip of always making Dale feel like a second banana. And I do like that Chip's rebuttal to that is that there is no second banana. It's just banana and another banana. And honestly, I don't remember if we talked about this specifically when we did the original show, but I did always kind of feel like that. I mean, Chip was the leader of the group by default, I think. But it's not like Chip and Dale. I think it's just Chip and Dale because C comes before D.
Well,
and because it's also Chip and Dale Furniture, Chip and Dale Dancers. You know, there's that joke at the beginning of the movie. When you hear Chip and Dale, what do you think of? Well, you think of the guy who invented the furniture. Good job, guy. Well, what's the second thing you think of? Well, you think of the dancers. Good job, guys. But at least third, you think of the chipmunks. You know? And so, I mean, like, yeah, it's a play on words, but I don't think you think of, like, Chip before you think of Dale. They're a matched set. It is banana and other banana.
Yeah, but that's not how Dale sees it, you know?
Well,
And
I mean, they set up Dale as kind of a douche at the beginning.
Dale seems to be just as much of an idiot in real life that he is in the show. Which, for better or for worse, that's what they're doing in this movie. And it's not a bad concept. Like, the general pieces of this movie are not bad. Taking place in a Roger Rabbit-like world where fictional characters and real people exist side by side. And it's not just cartoons anymore. It's clay people. It's sock puppets. It's any kind of non-human character exists as its own being. Which is a very interesting concept. Which means the Muppets exist in this universe as independent people, not as puppets.
Well, the thing is that the Muppets do get name checked
Mm-hmm.
in this. We don't see any of them, sadly. But they do talk about the Muppets at one point.
And we do get a name drop of Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Well, and we do see the movie.
Yeah.
They have the movie playing in the background because by the time that they made this movie, the Fox buyout had gone through, so now they own that movie.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, the idea of a Roger Rabbit-like world, great idea. The idea of a well-known duo having a falling out, one moving on with their life and the other trying to cling on to fame, that's a great idea. Everything in this movie, the ideas are really good. I just don't think they work in a Chip and Dale movie. That's my big problem with this. I don't know how that's how you feel or not.
I mean, kinda, yeah. I really love the idea, you were talking about like, oh, it's not just cartoon characters anymore, it's also like clay people and, sock puppets and stuff. The thing is, I really like the idea. I mean, we're just gonna call him Gumby because he's supposed to be Gumby. I guess they just couldn't get the rights.
They call him Bootleg Gumby.
Yeah, he's like, what is his real name in the movie? Like Putty or something?
Captain Putty.
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons, who does an amazing job because he's J.K. Simmons and he always does an amazing job. He's the chief of police or whatever. And he's supposed to be Gumby. I think they wrote it as Gumby and then just couldn't get the rights, so they were like, call him Putty, I guess. But, he's the surprising, not surprising villain. Because he's voiced by J.K. Simmons, so, he's gonna be the villain. And also, he's the chief of police, so, he's gonna be a villain.
Think, Chippendale, think! Had to get that one out there.
Yeah. But it really made me realize that Gumby would make a really good horror villain.
Gumby could be anything. He's made of clay. I mean, even in his own cartoons, he would turn into pretty much anything that he needed to do. Anything he needed to be. So taking that idea and turning it into a villain is a very interesting concept.
There is a lot of T2, with the T1000 liquid metal kind of thing going on that they directly reference. But also weirdly kind of Carpenter's The Thing in there with the way he transforms and goes after the chick at the end.
Yeah. I mean, Chip kind of drops the idea of this rookie cop that Ellie, played by Kiki Lane. Hey, another Kiki.
Yeah.
That she could be the villain because, oh hey, she says she knows all of our episodes, but she can't name a single episode. She has to be the villain because it's too obvious if the chief of police is the villain, which they make a reference to several times in the movie. That Captain Putty even admits this. When you came to me to be your partner, I told you I'm the chief of police. It's too obvious.
Yeah.
But Ellie is a great character in this movie, as you know, she loves cartoons. She wants to protect them. At the end of the movie, she becomes a private detective for tunes that have been bootlegged. So there's that. But now that I've said that, our main villain, Peter Pan, Sweets Pete, as he's called in the movie, voiced by Will Arnett. As I said this before, the aging of these characters are very inconsistent. So Peter Pan, Disney's Peter Pan, came out in 1953, where he would be a young man, a young boy. And then he aged out of acting and had to find a new career. So there was a bit of controversy when this movie came out because the voice of Peter Pan in the original movie was Bobby Driscoll. And Sweet Pete's entire story is the story of Bobby Driscoll.
Yeah, if you want to hear that whole sad story, go back and listen to our Peter Pan episode.
So there was a bit of controversy with this movie that they just took the story of Bobby Driscoll and just made a cartoon villain out of him. Bobby Driscoll's story, like you said, Kiki, had a very tragic ending. In this version, Peter Pan grows older. He's not as in demand as he was anymore. So he decides to start his own film company of bootleg cartoons, giving cartoons who have, for one reason or another, no longer in demand, to be bootlegified and remake their old movies over and over again to be sold at a discount price at like dollar stores.
I would watch Spaghetti Dogs.
And Spaghetti Dogs too at the end of this year.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of, because seeing these bootleg movies made me think, if you're a fan of Phalis on YouTube and his review of the Dingo Pictures movies, this is it.
Or something like the Asylum Pictures, or, you know, if you've got a soft spot in your heart for those kind of things, this sort of plot line will make you laugh.
Mm-hmm. And of the bootleg cartoons, we also see Pooh Bear and Tigger, also voiced by Jim Cummings.
Although with slightly different voices. Like, you can still tell it's Jim Cummings, but when he does the bootleg Pooh Bear and Tigger, it's just slightly off. Which, I mean, props, because that has to be a bit of a stretch, you know?
Yeah.
We've talked before about how difficult it is to be a good actor acting badly. And I think it's also probably very difficult for a good voice actor who has worked so long to perfect an iconic voice to then muddle that iconic voice into a parody of that iconic voice. So, I mean, bravo to him for doing it in a believable way.
Apparently also Pete, but he's just Pete. Like, Pete is himself in a parody of Aladdin. Or a bootleg of Aladdin.
Yeah.
And then a bootleg Simpsons, which doesn't make sense considering The Simpsons is still on the air and still making new episodes. Why would you need to bootleg them?
But people do that anyway. I mean, I know it seems weird, but people do that anyway.
I know, but it doesn't make sense in the movie that you would take The Simpsons and bootleg them to remake their show that is still on the air.
Eh.
Though the one thing that did make me laugh is the billboard and actual movie we see of Batman versus E.T.
Yeah, that did make me laugh too.
I don't know how much of this was Batman versus Superman, just a clip of it that they just edited E.T. into.
Oh, speaking of superheroes and cameos, the weirdest cameo, just Paul Rudd being in here to talk about how he was Ant-Man for a while.
Yeah, he was talking about how, yeah, the original movie was going to be called Ant-Man, and I was just a guy that was very nice to aunts. It's a funny joke, but it's a Lonely Island joke. And I'll leave it at that. Take it however you want to take it.
Of course, in the South, that joke doesn't work because most people pronounce them the same way. I mean, there are pockets of people that pronounce those two words different ways.
Mm-hmm. And in the credits, we actually see a poster for this Ant-Man.
Yeah, it's him being hugged by various older women. And then the title.
The idea of Chip and Dale just becoming their characters in real life. Chip is all into, we're gonna actually become detectives and solve this case of the bootleggers, and Chip is just, we're actors, we're not detectives and all that, and that's fine. And then they actually, break the case and all of that. I really do want to talk about the story here, but it's just, I'm more interested in everything else that's happening in the movie. I'm sorry, dear listener.
Yeah, the story is not really that great or substantial. It's just a reason for them to be, well, they shouldn't be solving a crime, but they're solving a crime, Yeah. And mostly it's because they do the quote-unquote right thing and call the police. And the police go like, we're not going to do anything about it. Mostly because, of the big twist reveal that you can see coming from the very beginning, which is that the police captain is working for the bad guy. But, the young idealistic fangirl cop, she's like, well, we can't do anything about it, but you guys played detectives on TV for a long time, why don't you do it? Which is so dumb as a plot.
Yeah, again, if this was any other cartoon, it could work. Just doesn't work for me, doesn't really work as Chip and Dale. Some of the other gags, though, worked, such as one of the reporters being a literal 3D character as she's blurred and her mic says 3D. I don't know if you put on 3D glasses, the effect would work or not.
I mean, it might, and weirdly, I do have that particular type of 3D glasses in my house, and I didn't think to go get them and test that. That character also voiced by Paula Abdul. So, I guess they were just like, while we have you here. The thing about it is, though, is that I am not a huge fan of, like, I'm a fan of Sherlock Holmes and stuff because that was the original, but I'm not really a big fan of random detective stories because it's always people what shouldn't be solving crimes go and solve crimes. And this is one of those things, except usually it's a bit more intelligently done because it's people getting fed up that the police won't do anything, and they're like, well, if we're going to get justice, we're going to have to do it ourselves, which makes a bit more sense. But in this movie, the cop girl is just like, hey, we're not going to do our jobs, so why don't you do your fake job from TV and do our job for us? Which is an even dumber version.
Yeah.
And I get that she's a fangirl and she wants to be like, hey, I solved a case once with Chip and Dale, but wow, that's stupid.
Yeah. Like I said, the gags are kind of more fun than the plot. Like, there's an entire section of Los Angeles where lifelike 3D characters live. From that era where every 3D movie or anything like that, or video game, had lifelike 3D graphics. That did not work at all. So I thought that was a nice gag.
Well, it's a nice gag because it's called the Uncanny Valley. So in this version of LA, the valley is the Uncanny Valley. And that to me was hilarious. And then you've got Seth Rogen playing a character from like a Polar Express type movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that Beowulf Polar Express era.
And he's only here because we can get all of Seth Rogen's other characters from other movies in one movie. Because there's a gag where he's down at the Comic-Con, and there's his version of Pumbaa from Lion King, and his character from Monster vs. Aliens, and other characters that he's voiced.
Yeah,
all
the one
looking-
from like Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's like 4 or 5 of them.
All saying that he looks dumb.
Yeah.
And the joke is they're all Seth Rogen. Ha ha.
I mean, honestly, I didn't mind that scene. I also like the scene where Chip and Dale first meet his character, and they're like, are you looking at us? He's like, yes, I'm looking exactly at you. And they're like, your eyes look so dead, but so lifelike. You know, it's like, because that's also a thing about those movies, is they could never get the eye line correct.
Mm.
So the characters were always looking slightly off to the side of the character they were supposed to be talking to. But also the eyes looked hyper realistic.
That everything's motion capture. Like when we talked about Mars Needs Moms a little while ago.
Yeah. But it's just off enough, you know, I mean, that's what the Uncanny Valley is it's just off enough to trigger your, like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
But it looks so human, but I know it's not human, you know. I liked that they mentioned that era of animation and they worked it in to the plot so well.
Mm-hmm. And I do like the other part of town where it's just Main Street, which is just all of these wholesome cartoon characters, and Dale kind of looks like, yeah, they're using their wholesome looks, but they're all criminal sellers. That guy sells this, that guy sells that. When I'm down on my luck, I sell my fur to that wig salesman.
Yeah.
And they're all old cartoons and puppets. I'm pretty sure the baker character, the cheese seller, would have been the Swedish chef if they could have gotten away with it.
Well, yeah, because he does have that fake Swedish accent kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And then his eyes move, and are you a cop? He drops the accent. I don't think they would have gotten away. I don't think whoever is in charge of the Muppets at Disney would have let that slide. The joke that they spoiled in the trailer, the big chase scene at Comic-Con where they're trying to hide, just grab some random clothes and won't be disguised, and they ended up going into an Indiana Jones booth, and Chip just wears Indiana Jones's jacket and his hat, and he just looks like Chip from the cartoon show. Because that was the joke in the original cartoon. Chip was dressed as Indiana Jones. Dale was dressed as Magnum P.I. Well, you mentioned Dale kind of being a douche in this movie. And part of that doucheness is him pushing for a Rescue Rangers reboot. Like, that's his thing for the entire movie. Is he's trying to get Chip on board. He's trying to get Monty on board for this Rescue Rangers reboot. He says, oh, so many people on social media are talking about it. There's a Facebook page for it. And Chip kind of sees through it. The only one who wants a Rescue Rangers reboot is you. I've left that world behind. And yeah, it does make Dale come off as a douche. Like, it's the only part of his career that anyone's interested in. And you could kind of see that fading star celebrity aspect. And it really does rub me the wrong way with the way they present Dale in this movie.
It was really sad to me because I know you have to have some kind of conflict between characters, but
Yeah.
It's having Dale be such an annoying little brat through most of the movie.
Yeah. Like the big ending here, where they Dale rescues Chip from the bootleggers, and the bootleg machine explodes, and Peter Pan gets all bootlegged, and he just becomes this
weird amalgamation of a bunch of different character parts.
I was gonna say chimera, but yeah.
That also works.
But yeah, and it's a very interesting how they have him set up, because it's like one leg is Optimus Prime, the other leg is Woody. He's got one arm that's Wreck-It Ralph. He's got another arm that's a Super Mario Bullet Bill cannon. And for some reason, Fat Cat's head. Yet his torso is still Peter Pan. And he just goes off on Chip and Dale, getting this big revenge thing. And like I said, the scene that they made up at the beginning of the movie comes into play because they use cartoon logic by bashing each other in the head with a pipe so the cartoon birds can pop up. That gag I did like.
Where the bird's wife is like, don't answer the phone. He's like, but it's my job.
Yeah, like there are these in the cartoon, in this world, there are birds whose entire job is, I will appear over the head of another cartoon character whenever they get injured. Which I love. Again, I love that gag. And the fact that that these kind of, it's my job, I have to do this. And it plays up just like it did in that clip at the beginning, where the birds pop up, and because he has Fat Cat's head, it's like, ooh, birds. A running plot in this movie is Ugly Sonic talking about him having his own TV show, where he follows the FBI and they catch criminals, and then he comes in with the FBI to arrest Sweet Pete.
Yeah, because Dale finally had written him off, like, you're just a liar, man. You don't have any connections. There's no show for you. You're just a loser like I am and everything. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, like, here comes Ugly Sonic with his FBI buddies to save the day. And they're like, oh, okay, he wasn't lying. Weird.
That actually, that twist I did like. Though, the rehabilitation of Ugly Sonic, but I did like that, the celebrity that nobody likes actually came through in the end. And it's just, they all saved the day. People are talking about him all the time. Hey, we're going to get a Rescue Rangers reboot finally made. And yay, we're gonna get our reboot. We're gonna get our thing. The bootleg tunes are saved. Some of the bootleg tunes are actually pretty creative, like the Pegasus Bambi.
Yeah. I love that there's a bootleg Bonkers in the crowd.
Yeah. Someone really was interested in a bootleg Bonkers. Weirdly, bootleg, a show we haven't talked about yet, bootleg Phineas and Ferb.
Yeah, that was strange. The one that I did not see coming, though, was that Monterey Jack suddenly now has Dumbo ears.
They Dumbo'd me. And now he's bootleg Dumbo.
Yeah, I didn't really get that, but okay.
But yeah, now they're getting their reboot, and as Dale said, yeah, and what was it? There's another plot point is Chip hating rap. So at the end they say, yeah, we're gonna get some R&B singer to sing the theme song when they just want to hear the original, and then you get an R&B version of the Rescue Rangers theme song. And I get that the joke is, haha, the Lonely Island are making a joke how they hate rap. I get the joke. It comes off very forced in the movie. Because it starts with Chip watching TV, and it's like you said earlier, it's a clip from the Alvin and the Chipmunks movie that they say is their new music video where they're rapping. And as Chip say, there's nothing sadder than seeing a washed up cartoon character rap. And that plays off at the midpoint in the movie where they meet a cartoon snake that makes his own remixes, and he has a remix of the Disney Afternoon theme song, and he asks Chip and Dale to drop some bars, and they have to make up a rap on the spot, which is like the worst rap you've ever heard, but that's the point. It's supposed to be bad because Chip hates rap. Like I said, I get that the joke is the Lonely Island, the group of white guy comedian rappers making a joke about how they hate rap. I get the joke, but it just doesn't work well in the movie.
I also kind of agreed with Chip about please stop making cartoons from my childhood suddenly burst out into rap. Because the thing is that he's right that it never works, and even though they didn't put it this way, it comes off very, how do you do, fellow kids?
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the point of the joke. Yeah, Lonely Island are comedian rappers, but their point is not like, hey, we're rapping trying to connect with the youth. They're rapping because they grew up on rap. You know? It's not like, hey, you know this thing that didn't used to do it? What's cool with the kids now? Oh, rap. You know, it's like the Chipmunks. The thing about the Chipmunks rapping is that the Chipmunks were always just like a way to do weird popular music to whatever was popular at the time, you know?
I mean, one of Chipmunks, their big quote comeback in the 80s was them doing a punk album. Why? Because punk was popular.
And if you watch the Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoon from when we were kids, like, what were the songs they were doing? They were doing Michael Jackson, and they were doing,
Billy
you know,
Joel.
the Chipettes were doing Madonna. And you know, because that's what was popular when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they did that entire punk album, which was so weird, you know? And then it was like, well, then what was popular when they did those new CGI movies? Well, it was a little bit of rap. It was a little bit of like, you know, you had a bad day, you take it, you know.
Yeah.
It was like an Ed Sheeran song at one point or whatever, you know. It just, whatever was playing on the radio when they recorded the audio for the movie.
Mm.
And so I think that was more the thing. And the funniest thing about it is it's the Lonely Island guys. If they'd have wanted to make a really funny rap with Chip and Dale, they could have. But they didn't want to because that's not who these characters are.
Just a few years before this, they did Popstar. And I actually really liked that movie. So I know that they can do funny rap in a situation like this.
Yeah, my only problem with the joke was that to me it went on too long. I love Flula Borg as the snake DJ because I like Flula Borg as a comedian. Whenever I see him on British panel shows or whatever, I think his jokes usually land. And I generally like the songs that the Lonely Island put together. So I think that they could have put it together. And honestly, you know, the like, my name is Dale and I don't eat whale, and I am Dale and I would never eat whale. And well, once you start rhyming Dale with whale, you can't get out of it, huh? And like, that's kind of funny because it's like, well, what else is he going to do? This is not his wheelhouse, you know?
Well, my name is Dale, and I'm here to say kind of deal.
Yeah. And the thing is if that had kind of been the end of the joke and you could just hear mumbling in the background while Chip went and got the MacGuffin, and then it had just ended with the snake being like, oh, wow, look at that. We had a rapping chipmunk. We're not good at rapping. And then that's the end of the joke. I think it's a funnier joke. But the fact that it's like, it keeps going back to Dale and he's like just saying the same thing over again. and then it goes to Chip, and then he spends another 3 minutes saying the same thing over again. And it's like, okay, stop it. We get the joke.
Yeah.
The thing I do like is that they finally get the whole crew together, and they do the whole thing about, it's so obvious that the bad guy was the actual bad guy. They take out the big bad guy. They take out the, smaller bad guy. We hadn't even talked about Zipper's voice, but Zipper is voiced by the All-State guy who was also God on Lucifer. Good enough actor, but the joke is like, yeah, Zipper as an actor had to do the little high-pitched buzzy voice, but he's really like a serious, philosophical, deep-voiced dude, Which, haha, I'm not sure that joke lands for me as heavily as they wanted it to. And then the cop chick gets her dream of doing a really awkward laugh with the gang after Gadget makes a bad joke.
Which, again, was never in the original show.
But it is a stereotype of shows from around that time, just not that one, which feels strange.
That's why I feel like, was this supposed to be something else? Like I said, the beats and the gags and all of this stuff, this world, it's great. It's an interesting idea. It just doesn't work for Chip and Dale, much less Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. Now, if this movie was always intended to be a Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie, and this was all the original idea, I gotta know, what were you thinking? Because after watching this movie the first time, I just wanted, well, why didn't you just do a Rescue Rangers movie? I would have preferred, again, as a fan of the original show, would have preferred a movie based off the original premise of the show. But then again, maybe I'm not the audience for this movie, which is really weird, because why would you make a movie called Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers that kind of circumvents Hollywood and all that, while not trying to appeal to that millennial, late Gen X demographic?
I was about to say, if we're not the audience for this movie, who the hell is the audience for this movie?
Yeah.
I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but who are they trying to target if not us? This movie is nostalgia bait, and we're the only ones nostalgic for this property. I mean, as far as like our generation, the late Gen X, early millennial Disney adults. Like, hi, we are your target audience. If you're not targeting us, who are you targeting? So, yeah, if we're not the ones that are, like, really into this movie, what are you doing? And I was just as confused as you by that. Like I said, weirdly, this was kind of what I expected after seeing the trailers, but this was not what I expected when I first heard that there was a movie coming out. And if you ask me what I wanted, if they were going to resurrect this IP as a movie, this would not have been it.
Honestly, the only other funny joke I found here was the billboard of Meryl Streep as Mr. Doubtfire. And
Yeah.
why do I want to see that movie?
Well, it's Meryl Streep. I mean, do you need another reason?
True. As for the question, does this movie have the magic? It is a very confusing one for me, because on one hand, like I said, the ideas in this movie are very interesting. Again, setting it in a Roger Rabbit-like world, setting it in a world where these two actors have to become their television characters in real life. And
Okay, let me ask you this.
All right.
If Chip and Dale were the characters we know, not actors, but the rest of the world is hybrid humans and cartoons and whatnots. But they're also just detectives. Does the movie then work like you want it?
Maybe. That's a weird one, because if it was just, here are these two characters that want to be detectives, small detectives solving big crimes, and they end up in this situation where they have to solve a crime. If it was this movie, with this storyline, with these writers, with these jokes, no. If it was something akin to more like the original series, where it was just, for lack of a better term, Scooby-Doo style mysteries, even though that wasn't the original show either, I would have been more favorable to it. Like I said, there's a lot of good ideas in here. It just does not mesh well together, and it does not mesh well with the IP of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. So all of that together, I'm going to say this movie has no magic. I don't know about you.
See, my problem with it was the idea of like, oh, they're actors and they were in a TV show and now they're like, it was the Hollywood aspect to me that I didn't like. If they had been like Chip and Dale and it was the story of like how they got together, how they decided to become detectives, how they met, and maybe like how they fell apart and how they got back together, but written by these people. Because for me, a lot of the jokes landed. I just didn't like and also Hollywood. I didn't mind the Roger Rabbit idea. I didn't mind, a lot of the things. I want to give a raise for whoever was writing all the background jokes, because that was the best part. Like, just mute the movie and just watch whatever's going on in the background, because that crap is funny. I don't know who was putting in all the stuff in the background, but all the billboards and the random, like there's a joke at the end that I think a lot of people miss. And in fact, it had to be pointed out to me by the person I was watching it with, so I would have missed it too. But the freighter that's just parked alongside the docks when they're having the final fight with Amalgamation Pete or whatever, is like the 9 Men shipping company or whatever. Is the reference to the 9 Old Men animators from Disney. So, I mean, there's all kinds of like little Easter eggs and cool jokes and stuff if you're looking out for it in the background. And that stuff really appeals to me. I was like, okay, I am the target audience for whoever was writing that stuff in the background. But kind of the main plot and the Dale is trying to hold on to his fading star, and we used to be famous and make a TV show and now we've all fallen apart and stuff. That stuff was not what I was here for. So I'm gonna go with you on no magic, but the thing is, I think if they tweaked it just slightly, this group of people could have probably made a movie that really would have appealed to me, but not with quite this angle. Like, I didn't care about the Hollywood actor part. I wanted them to be the cartoon detectives or whatever from the TV show. I wanted the TV show to be real life and not a TV show.
Like if they were just cartoons that were detectives having a falling out in a world of human, in a Roger Rabbit style world, and then he gets come back for one last case kind of deal, it would have been a better movie.
Yeah. Like if the police had come to them and been like, Monterey Jack has been kidnapped and you're the only ones I think can solve the case because we don't understand these clues. They seem to have too much to do with your previous career or
your
something.
old cases.
Yeah, your old cases.
And
yeah.
have the clues be references to the old episodes.
Yeah, something like that. Then it would have appealed to me more, I think, than this like, oh, Dale's such a sad sack trying to wait for his agent to call or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Also, Disney Afternoon Fight Fest, I want it.
Yeah, like I said, the stuff in the background, yeah.
Give me a Super Smash Brothers style game with all of the characters from the Disney Afternoon.
And also Lego Miserable. I want to see that.
Yeah, so I think that's all we can say on the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie. But as for next week, Kiki, when we were discussing this, we were both surprised that we haven't done this movie yet. Inside Out, because Inside Out 2 is coming out pretty soon. So it's finally time to get inside Riley's head, look at her emotions, and talk about this movie.
Yep. What if emotions had emotions?
What if feelings had feelings? So come back next week for Inside Out, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here. Join our conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic. We are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at Rewatch the Magic. And new episodes are available every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it. Podcasts are fun.
But there's work to be done.
We encourage you to get involved. Here are some organizations we support.
The American Civil Liberties Union fights for the constitutional rights of all Americans. Find them at aclu.org.
The National Network of Abortion Funds helps people find access to safe abortion services. Their site is abortionfunds.org.
The Trevor Project provides a 24/7 crisis helpline for LGBTQ youth and education services for schools on LGBTQ issues. They can be found at thetrevorproject.org.
Or find a way to help in your area.